In the wasteland of Fallout, survival is a constant struggle, and violence is an ever-present reality. The world that emerged after the bombs fell is one of chaos, scarcity, and unpredictability, where every day brings new threats and challenges. The collapse of society has removed the structures that once kept human behavior in check, leaving behind a lawless environment where only the strongest, the smartest, or the most ruthless endure. The inhabitants of this irradiated world have adapted to its harsh conditions in a variety of ways, ranging from simple scavenging to organized raiding. But one constant remains: life is cheap, and death is never far away. In such a world, the line between killing to survive and killing for pleasure becomes both apparent and blurred, defining the nature of violence in the wasteland. Survival-driven violence in the Fallout universe is often a practical necessity. Raiders, for example, are one of the most common threats to travelers and settlements alike. They engage in acts of theft, assault, and murder, but their actions are largely motivated by the need to acquire resources, protect their territory, or maintain a sense of power in a brutal environment. These raiders live by a harsh code dictated by circumstance. Their morality is shaped by the extreme scarcity of food, weapons, and safe shelter. To kill a rival or a stranger may be necessary to ensure their continued survival, to protect their companions, or to maintain access to essential supplies. Similarly, ordinary wastelanders, forced to defend their homes and loved ones against mutants, raiders, or predatory creatures, often resort to lethal force as a defensive measure. Such violence, though brutal, is rooted in necessity rather than desire. The wasteland has made it so that clean hands are a rarity, and almost everyone is compelled at some point to take another's life to protect themselves or those they care for. The danger of survival-driven violence is compounded by the unpredictability of the environment. Deathclaws, feral ghouls, and irradiated wildlife make even simple journeys a matter of life and death, while the scarcity of water, food, and medical supplies creates pressure to act aggressively toward other humans. Every encounter has the potential to escalate, and hesitation can be fatal. As a result, people become conditioned to view violence as a necessary part of existence, often losing the ability to distinguish between self-defense and the pursuit of dominance. In this sense, killing becomes a normalized part of the Wasteland's ecosystem, a grim reality that all survivors must internalize to endure. In contrast, the Wasteland also hosts a more sinister type of violence: killing for pleasure, a phenomenon embodied by the serial killers who roam the irradiated ruins. These individuals are not motivated by survival, food, or resources. They are driven by darker impulses, seeking satisfaction in the suffering and death of others. Unlike raiders, who kill for necessity and power, these killers take enjoyment in the act itself, treating human life as expendable entertainment. Their existence highlights a disturbing truth about the post-apocalyptic world. In the absence of societal rules, the darkest aspects of human nature can thrive, unrestrained and unchecked. The distinction between survival-based killing and killing for pleasure is essential to understanding the social landscape of the wasteland. While almost every survivor may take part in acts of violence out of necessity, serial killers operate outside of the moral framework that governs even the most ruthless raiders. They stalk their victims, plan their attacks meticulously, and often leave deliberate marks or trophies to memorialize their actions. Their killings are not impulsive responses to threat but carefully orchestrated events designed to maximize terror, control, or personal gratification in a world already desensitized to brutality. The presence of these individuals introduces a level of psychological horror that exceeds even the most common dangers of survival. The Wasteland's environment, therefore, shapes both the frequency and the character of violence. Constant exposure to death, danger, and scarcity conditions its inhabitants to accept killing as a routine aspect of life. However, the emergence of serial killers reveals the darker potential of human adaptation, where necessity dictates one form of violence. Obsession, compulsion, and psychopathy drive another, creating a spectrum that ranges from pragmatic self-defense to deliberate cruelty. The coexistence of these two types of killers underscores the precariousness of life in the Fallout universe, where even the most cautious or capable individual can fall victim to forces entirely outside their control. Ultimately, the wasteland of Fallout is a place where the boundaries of morality and survival are constantly tested. Violence is unavoidable, and even those with the best intentions are forced into morally complex decisions. The contrast between killing to survive and killing for pleasure demonstrates how human nature interacts with environmental pressures, highlighting the thin line that separates pragmatism from depravity. It is a world where every action carries consequences, and where the most dangerous threats are not always the mutated creatures or raiding bands, but the darkest impulses that can arise within humanity itself. The harsh reality of survival, coupled with the existence of those who kill for pleasure, paints a chilling picture of life in the post-apocalyptic world, where the fight for survival often coexists uneasily with the darkest aspects of human nature. In the wasteland of Fallout, not all violence is random or impersonal. Some of the most disturbing acts are carried out by those who manipulate fear, control, and secrecy to achieve their deadly goals. One of the most notable examples of this is the macabre business between Doc Morbid and Iguana Bob, a partnership that epitomizes the dark underbelly of survival in the irradiated world. Iguana Bob's is a popular food stand where travelers and locals alike flock for what seems to be a simple delicacy: roasted iguana meat, a staple of the wasteland diet. Perhaps one could enjoy tender, flavorful chunks of iguana roasted over a simple fire, a rare moment of comfort in a harsh environment. However, the true origin of the meat is far darker than anyone imagines, and a closer examination of the supply line reveals a network of death and exploitation that underpins this seemingly ordinary transaction. Iguana Bob himself appears to be just a humble vendor, pulling skewers of meat from the back of his stand and serving eager customers without much thought. Observant individuals, however, might notice that the stock of dried iguanas hanging on display rarely decreases, and fresh skewers continually appear as if by magic. The truth lies not in the casual harvesting of desert lizards, but in a carefully hidden network of human slaughter. The trail of the meat can be followed across the wasteland to Junktown, a settlement that appears innocuous on the surface but hides a chilling secret. Unlike other communities, Junktown lacks any natural source for a large supply of iguanas or any organized hunting operations. Yet shipments of meat continue to arrive, suggesting an alternative and horrifying origin. The supply ultimately traces back to Doc Morbid, a man ostensibly respected for his medical skills, who secretly operates a basement slaughterhouse beneath his clinic. Doc Morbid is known in Junktown for his skill in treating injuries and teaching medical practices to the less fortunate. Patients come to him for bandaging, blood transfusions, and guidance on basic care, often paying high fees for his knowledge. Yet, beneath this veneer of civility lies a sinister enterprise that preys on those who cannot pay or attempt to evade his charges. Unpaid patients or those who attempt to leave without settling their accounts are kidnapped by Morbid's assistants and brought to a basement outfitted like a grotesque processing plant. Meat hooks, crude refrigeration units, and metal slabs designed to hold human bodies serve as tools in the methodical slaughter of these unfortunate individuals. Victims are killed, their flesh processed into consumable meat, and then shipped to Iguana Bob, completing a cycle that merges culinary enterprise with murder. In this way, Morbid ensures his clinic is profitable, and Bob secures a steady supply of meat with little concern for ethics or law. The ingenuity and horror of this arrangement are compounded by the obliviousness or complicity of the public. Most customers at Iguana Bob's never pause to consider the origins of their meal. The delicious taste of the roasted iguana overshadows the horrifying reality behind it. The wasteland's scarcity of resources and the normalization of death allow such atrocities to flourish largely unchecked. Here, violence is systematized, with human life reduced to raw material in a grotesque supply chain. Morbid and Bob exemplify a uniquely depraved form of survivalism, where cruelty, commerce, and human exploitation intertwine seamlessly. The concept of serial killing in the Wasteland extends beyond profit-driven murder into psychological terror and legend. Tales of the Pint-Sized Slasher, a mythical child serial killer, illustrate how fear can perpetuate through folklore and influence behavior. Originating in the suburbs of pre-war Washington, the legend describes a short, child-sized figure responsible for brutal murders, often depicted as stalking the innocent while eluding capture. Stories like these blur the line between myth and reality, with some evidence suggesting the existence of real-life analogs who carried out homicides in ways that inspired urban legends. The figure of the slasher demonstrates how post-apocalyptic societies, deprived of stable authority and law, can allow myths to evolve into tools for manipulating fear, controlling behavior, or even inspiring real acts of violence. The serial killers of the Fallout universe are not limited to one method or motivation. Some, like Doc Morbid, kill for profit, while others, such as the legendary pint-sized slasher, commit atrocities that are senseless, ritualistic, or designed to instill terror. Their existence reflects the extremes of human adaptability in the Wasteland. The mind shaped by isolation, trauma, or greed can find new ways to exploit vulnerability. These killers operate within a society already desensitized to violence, where morality is fluid and ethical boundaries are constantly tested. Their acts serve as stark reminders that, in a world stripped of social norms, some individuals are capable of embracing humanity's darkest tendencies without hesitation. The Wasteland provides fertile ground for such individuals, offering both opportunity and concealment. Remote locations, weak enforcement of law, and scattered populations allow killers to operate undetected, leaving a trail of fear and death behind them. Yet, the same environment that fosters their survival also exposes them to rival threats, scavengers, or other predators, creating a delicate balance between dominance and vulnerability. Even those who kill for personal satisfaction or profit must navigate the dangerous ecosystem of the Wasteland, where other humans, mutants, and environmental hazards are constant obstacles. Ultimately, the existence of serial killers like Doc Morbid and the legendary pint-sized slasher highlights the intersection of human ingenuity, depravity, and the harsh necessities of life in the Fallout universe. Violence in the Wasteland is not only a tool for survival, but also a lens through which the darkest aspects of human nature are revealed. In a landscape defined by scarcity, danger, and moral ambiguity, the killers of the Wasteland occupy a unique space. They are both products of their environment and active agents of terror, forcing every survivor to confront the reality that, in this new world, some of the deadliest threats may come from their own species. In the irradiated world of Fallout, some killers are not motivated by survival, profit, or even legend, but by obsession, ideology, and a deeply ingrained belief in their own purpose. Among these figures, the families of Andale and the cult-like group known as the Family in Arafu represent the extreme end of human depravity, where murder is ritualized, normalized, and justified as a way of life. The tiny town of Andale is a seemingly innocent settlement at first glance, with its decaying pre-war homes, fractured fences, and friendly, polite residents. On the surface, it resembles a slice of Americana transplanted into a harsh wasteland, but its outward appearance masks a community built entirely on cannibalism, serial killing, and insular survival. The town is inhabited primarily by 4 families, of which only 2, the Smiths and the Wilsons, regularly interact with outsiders. Their polite demeanor and helpful facade are carefully maintained to lure travelers and scavengers into the town, only to trap them for the purposes of sustenance. The 3rd and 4th families remain largely hidden, assisting in maintaining the town's secrecy and reinforcing its dark, self-contained ecosystem. Old Man Harris, one of the few residents who seems to have escaped the influence of the other families, serves as a rare voice of warning, imploring travelers to leave Andale while avoiding explicit details of the horror lurking within. Harris's reluctance to fully explain the situation suggests the danger of exposing the truth, both for outsiders and perhaps for himself, as the town's inhabitants are highly protective of their way of life. those who venture too far into the town's structures, such as the padlocked basements beneath the Smith and Wilson residences, encounter a shocking reality. A sight eerily similar to Doc Morbid's clinic in Junktown, with hanging skeletons, stripped flesh, cages, and refrigerators filled with human meat. The basements serve as both slaughterhouses and storage, reinforcing the family's methodical approach to survival, turning murder into a routine and necessary practice. The violence is not random but calculated, with victims carefully chosen, lured in by the town's false kindness, and ultimately processed to sustain the community. The cannibalistic habits are reinforced through intermarriage over generations, creating a closed society entirely dependent on human flesh. In contrast to Andale, the family of Arafu represents a more ideological form of serial killing. Unlike the Andale families, who are motivated primarily by survival, the family combines violence with a cult-like belief system, transforming murder into a moral imperative. Their leader, Vance, claims that each member possesses a vampiric compulsion, a condition that traces their lineage back to historical or mythical vampires. While members of the family can consume ordinary food and exist in sunlight like any other human, Vance frames their bloodlust as a condition that must be indulged responsibly, creating a philosophical and psychological justification for their acts. The family's actions in Arafu, including nighttime raids on isolated towns, theft, and the systematic murder of locals, are presented as both necessary and righteous, providing them a sense of purpose and belonging in an otherwise harsh wasteland. The cult dynamic enforces compliance, loyalty, and secrecy, ensuring that the violent urges of individual members are directed toward collective objectives, preserving the group and maintaining its dominance over surrounding populations. New members, such as Ian West, who acquired his murderous tendencies through brain injury, are incorporated into the family's ideology, normalizing behavior that would otherwise be recognized as criminal or pathological. The family's methods reflect both predatory efficiency and psychological conditioning, turning natural human violence into a structured, communal enterprise. Both Andale and Arafu highlight how isolation and environmental pressures can distort morality, creating self-sustaining cycles of murder and deception. In Andale, the community's dependence on cannibalism arose from scarcity, fear, and the failure of conventional survival methods, producing a tightly controlled environment where death is normalized and outsiders are immediately processed into the system. In Arafu, ideology and a shared compulsion provide the moral framework for murder, allowing a community to thrive on bloodshed while maintaining a sense of purpose and structure. In both cases, the surrounding wasteland is manipulated to reinforce control. Towns are isolated, pathways are monitored, and outsiders are either eliminated or coerced, ensuring that the family's violent practices continue unchallenged. The psychological complexity of these groups is further highlighted by the tension between justification and morality. While most Wastelanders encounter violence as a threat to be survived, members of Andale and Arafu integrate it into their worldview, reframing murder as sustenance, ritual, or moral duty. This cognitive restructuring allows them to operate with minimal guilt, projecting the rationalization that their actions are necessary for survival, societal stability, or supernatural obligation. The combination of secrecy, social engineering, and ritualized violence ensures both the continuity of the family's practices and the perpetuation of terror among those who stumble into their domains. The presence of these serial killers underscores the depth of human depravity in the Fallout universe, demonstrating that even in a world overrun by mutants, radiation, and environmental hazards, the greatest danger may lie in the minds and systems of other humans. Andale and Arafu illustrate how isolation, ideology, and necessity can converge to create self-contained ecosystems of murder, where ethical boundaries dissolve, and violence becomes both normalized and celebrated. By embedding murder into social structures and belief systems, these communities survive and even thrive, leaving a lasting legacy of fear, legend, and horror. Their existence serves as a cautionary tale within the wasteland, highlighting the thin line between survival and depravity. and the terrifying ways that human society can adapt, even in a post-apocalyptic world, to transform atrocity into everyday life. In the violent and lawless wasteland of Fallout, some killers operate under a code of personal enjoyment and sadistic pleasure, targeting both the innocent and those who pose a threat to their desires. Among these figures, Clandon of the Gamera Casino, Pikmin of Boston's North End, and Dixie of the Disciples Raider Gang exemplify a particularly depraved level of human malevolence, where murder is entwined with psychopathy, artistry, or uncontrolled lust for bloodshed. Clandon presents a deceptive facade of civility and normality, blending into the chaotic environment of the New Vegas Strip as an unassuming figure who appears polite, helpful, and entirely separate from the casino's criminal enterprises. On the surface, he refrains from drinking, smoking, or participating in the indulgent vices surrounding him, projecting an image of restraint and decorum that contrasts sharply with the hedonistic and violent nature of the Strip. This false appearance is precisely what makes him so dangerous, as it allows him to operate without suspicion while carrying out acts of extreme brutality behind closed doors. Clandon's primary function is as a bomb maker, an expert in the use of industrial and chemical materials to create destructive devices capable of mass casualties, using only limited resources and ingenuity. He devises plans for weapons such as a deadly chlorine gas bomb intended to devastate the Gamera Casino and those within. Unlike ordinary explosives, this gas would react with moisture in human lungs to produce hydrochloric acid, causing extreme internal damage, suffocation, and a horrific death for anyone exposed. Yet, even this calculated, technical violence is only a fraction of his depravity. Behind a padlocked door in his room, he has established a secret operation where he tortures and murders the working women sent to him by the casino's overlords. These women are subjected to cruel and methodical mutilation, leaving their corpses behind as evidence of his sadistic tendencies, which he records on holotapes to preserve and relive the horror of his acts. Clandon's cruelty is deliberate, meticulous, and entirely self-serving, reflecting a psychopathy that is both methodical and horrifying in its scope. His actions demonstrate the horrifying intersection of calculated expertise and unchecked sadism, illustrating the extreme dangers that one individual can pose when intelligence and brutality converge. Pikmin, known as the murderous artist of Boston's North End, presents a different form of serial killing, blending obsession with a morbid sense of aesthetics. Operating within decayed rowhouses, he captures and kills isolated raiders, using their blood and remains to create grotesque works of art. Each murder is carefully staged, with the victim's final expressions preserved in blood-soaked canvases that serve as both documentation and personal satisfaction. While Pikmin's methods are undeniably violent, they demonstrate a unique sense of targeted morality, as his victims are often those who themselves engage in terrorizing the wasteland. By focusing on raiders, Pikmin effectively removes dangerous elements from the environment while indulging his twisted artistic impulses. The combination of artistry and murder transforms him into a figure both horrifying and strangely principled within his own warped framework, raising questions about the nature of justice, revenge, and morality in a world where conventional law has collapsed. Dixie of the Disciples Gang represents yet another iteration of Wasteland psychopathy, characterized by impulsive violence, manipulation, and a love for close-quarters killing. Unlike Pikmin, whose violence is targeted and structured, Dixie thrives on chaos, enjoying the act of taking life directly with knives and other melee weapons. Her appearance and demeanor innocent, girlish, and approachable allow her to lure victims into complacency, ensuring that her attacks are swift, effective, and unchallenged. Dixie's lair reflects her compulsions, with rotting corpses and trophies such as holotapes that document her victims' final moments. She is a member of a gang already known for brutality, yet she distinguishes herself through the intensity, regularity, and sadistic creativity of her murders, highlighting the capacity for extreme violence even within already violent communities. Her actions demonstrate the potential for human cruelty to escalate when combined with cunning, charm, and total disregard for the lives of others. reinforcing the wasteland as a place where survival alone does not fully explain the prevalence of bloodshed. These figures illustrate a terrifying spectrum of serial killing in the Fallout universe, where psychopathy, artistry, and sadistic pleasure intersect with opportunity and human vulnerability. Whether hiding behind polite appearances like Clandon, framing violence as art like Pikmin, or exploiting charm and cunning like Dixie, these killers exploit the weaknesses of others, the chaos of the environment, and the absence of law to enact their desires. They serve as stark reminders that in a world filled with mutants, raiders, and radiation, the greatest dangers often come not from environmental hazards but from humans who embrace their darkest impulses without restraint. By normalizing violence, manipulating others, and integrating murder into their daily lives, these individuals embody a profound moral collapse, reflecting the deep and disturbing possibilities of human depravity in a post-apocalyptic world. The Wasteland, therefore, is not just a test of survival but a stage on which the worst aspects of human nature are revealed, honed, and left unchecked, creating a legacy of terror, fear, and lasting horror that persists across generations. The serial killers of the Fallout Wasteland represent some of the most disturbing and unpredictable threats in a world already ravaged by radiation, war, and societal collapse. While many dangers are external, such as mutated creatures, raiders, and hostile factions, the human capacity for cruelty emerges as one of the most terrifying aspects of the post-apocalyptic environment. Among these killers, groups like the Andale families, the Arafu cult known as the Family, and mysterious figures like the Na Killer and Fen Phantom exemplify the varied forms of violence, manipulation, and delusion that can manifest when societal norms collapse. In the small town of Andale, located in Virginia, the remnants of 4 pre-war families provide a chilling case study of survival transformed into depravity. The town's decaying houses and shattered infrastructure mask a dark secret that lies beneath the surface. Outwardly, the residents project a sense of normalcy, politeness, and friendliness that appears almost idyllic in contrast to the harsh wasteland around them. They interact with travelers, offer guidance, and maintain the trappings of a functioning community. Yet beneath this facade, the families' methods of survival have become horrifyingly perverse. The 4 families, after surviving the initial fallout by retreating into their bomb shelters, eventually exhausted their pre-stocked supplies, instead of adapting in ways familiar to other wasteland survivors, such as scavenging, farming, or joining with larger communities. They turned to murder and cannibalism. Each new arrival, stranger, or unwary wastelander who strayed too close to their town became a potential source of sustenance. Victims were lured through hospitality and kindness, only to be slaughtered and processed as meat for the families. Survival. Over the decades, the families became increasingly insular, intermarrying among themselves and forming a self-contained, incestuous, cannibalistic community entirely reliant on murder. The shocking revelation of their lifestyle comes to light in the basements of the Smith and Wilson family homes, where macabre displays of human remains, skeletons stripped of flesh, and caches of preserved meat reveal the full extent of their practices. The residents of Andale are a stark example of how isolation, desperation, and moral collapse can combine to create an enduring and dangerous microcosm of predatory behavior. In the town of Arafu, a different manifestation of serial killing and cult-like behavior emerges in the form of the Family, a violent and structured group led by a figure named Vance. Unlike the opportunistic murders of Andale, the Family operates according to a rigid belief system that frames their violence as justified and even necessary. This group preys on the small town's population, moving under the cover of night to abduct, kill, and control the remaining inhabitants. Their methods are terrifyingly organized, leaving the impression of a supernatural or inhuman threat. Vance asserts that the family members are vampires, descended from a line tracing back to figures like Vlad Dracula. While they exhibit none of the supernatural traits of traditional vampire lore, such as immortality or the need to avoid sunlight, they embrace the concept psychologically, allowing it to guide their cannibalistic behaviors and cement a sense of belonging among members. The family exemplifies the combination of delusion and structured violence, where the compulsion to kill is rationalized, celebrated, and socially reinforced within the group. Their interactions with towns like Arafu highlight the blurred line between protection and exploitation, as Vance negotiates arrangements in which his group supplies security in exchange for the ability to continue their violent practices. Beyond groups, individual killers like the Na Killer and Fen Phantom show that serial killing in the Fallout world can also manifest through myth, legend, and extreme isolation. The Na Killer, operating in pre-war Boston, employed water as a weapon, drowning victims and replacing their eyes with bottle caps, a gruesome homage to ancient funeral customs. This fusion of ritual, artistry, and murder illustrates the psychological complexity and ritualization that can arise in killers when civilization's moral constraints no longer exist. The Fen Phantom, operating in the same city, took advantage of isolation in the sewers to construct an elaborate underground lair filled with skeletons and the tools of his crimes. Audio recordings preserved his obsessions, his cat-and-mouse games with detectives, and his deliberate, methodical approach to murder. Both examples demonstrate how, in the absence of effective law enforcement and societal oversight, killers can thrive and develop complex methods and behaviors that extend beyond simple survival or opportunistic crime. Collectively, these cases reflect the grim reality of the Fallout Wasteland. The most dangerous threats are not always external monsters, but the dark aspects of human nature left unchecked. The killers thrive on isolation, chaos, and the vulnerabilities of others, often blending in with society until their violent inclinations are revealed through their deeds. Whether through structured cult-like behavior, ritualistic killing, psychopathy, or opportunistic predation, the serial killers of Fallout illustrate the breadth and depth of human depravity. Their presence transforms the wasteland into a morally hazardous space, where trust can be fatal and where the consequences of survival can force individuals and communities into choices that erode humanity itself. These killers serve as stark reminders that in a world stripped of law, order, and oversight, the darkest aspects of human nature are amplified, and the boundaries between survival, morality, and depravity are constantly tested, producing consequences that reverberate across generations and communities. The serial killers, whether individuals or groups, show the wasteland as not just a battleground for mutants and raiders, but as a stage where human cruelty, delusion, and obsession are given free rein. Their actions leave a permanent mark on the social and psychological landscape of the post-apocalyptic world, demonstrating that while radiation and monsters are formidable, humanity's capacity for evil can be even more dangerous, pervasive, and enduring. The Wasteland's serial killers occupy a unique position in this ecosystem, one where cunning, cruelty, and adaptation intersect to make them some of the most unpredictable and terrifying figures in a world already defined by chaos, scarcity, and moral collapse.